No. Thank you very much for hosting us, Your Excellency, Ambassador. Maybe if we start from the start, the EU is one of the key partners for Lesotho in various issues, economic, political, on the social front, and all that. You are involved in a lot of work with Lesotho, with the Lesotho government, with civil society, with the ordinary public. Maybe just take us through some of the projects that you have been handling, that you are involved in with Lesotho. Yes.
Very good. I think this interview, we have delayed it for quite some time, but it came just at the right moment because only this week we publish the new multi-annual cooperation program between the EU and Lesotho. And it's a program which covers the period 2021, which is now finished, until 2027. It's interesting in a way that the program is now called 2021-2027. It shows also the impact on the programming that the pandemic has had. So it's not that the program for Lesotho is delayed of 1 year. In fact, the program for Lesotho was one of the first being adopted, but the whole process of discussion, even if it continues in remote mode, it was indeed affected by the pandemic. So the new program marks, in a way, a new beginning. In the past, the resources for the Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific country were coming from a specific fund, the European Development Fund, under the Cotonou Agreement. Now all the resources for the cooperation with the country have been consolidated, and there is a new program covering all countries in the world, and resources are coming from the budget of the European Union. What can I say about this program? Later on I will send you the link to the publication so you can incorporate it in the newspaper article, but you can also use it as a future reference. What I would like to say about this program? First of all, it's a program which has been prepared in coordination with the government. It's based on the National Strategic Development Plan for Lesotho, and it has been prepared also conducting consultation with private sector, with civil society, within the limitation imposed by the pandemic. Another element that I think it's important to stress is the fact that there is continuity in the program, because the focus of the program of the European Union already in the past year had been the promotion of sustainable access and use of natural resources, in particular water, and support to governance and social protection. And these continue to be the pillar of our cooperation with Lesotho, of our programmable resources for Lesotho. And there is a chapter that we call Green and Resilient Economy, and under this chapter in particular we will support the continuation of the existing water program, so you can imagine a new phase of the water program supported until now by the European Union, and a program on energy. What probably is new is an increased emphasis of other energy resources apart from hydro, so also a focus on other renewable energy sources like wind and solar, but also measures that would increase energy efficiency. So think about energy saving measure in public building, for instance. Think about measure that will encourage also businesses and private citizens to save energy and to produce their own energy, but also measure to improve the management of energy sources. So I would like to stress that on one side there is an emphasis on increased production and on saving measure, but also the other aspect, it's the aspect of access. So the whole idea of the program is not just to produce more energy or to have more water resources distributed, but to make sure that they are made accessible. Up until now, if we look at energy, 62% of the population have no access to electricity. And if we look at the rural area, this is even lesser. So we are talking about 20% of the rural population having access to electricity. So if we look at the sustainable development goal, the idea is to provide universal access to electricity. So we see that Lesotho has still some ground to cover. And it's not just to provide access to any source of electricity, but hopefully to be able to increase the renewable renewable energy share in the electricity offer. For the time being, about half of the electricity distributed in Lesotho come from hydropower. So renewable energy source, a local energy source, but the rest need to be imported. And the rest is imported is in large part coal-based. So we see that the current situation is not ideal from an economic point of view because it affects the balance of payment of Lesotho. It makes it dependent on the energy supply of other countries, but also it's not good for the environment. So Lesotho has the capacity to produce enough energy for its population, but it needs to look to the different sources. Indeed, because of Lesotho being the water tower of Southern Africa, a lot of emphasis was placed in the past of hydropower, and indeed hydropower will continue to be a major energy source for Lesotho, but we need also to look to other opportunity. And it's of this week the news of funding provided, investment, let's say, investment provided by Electrify, an investment fund of the European Union, together with the REPP of the UK, to support the installation of 11 mini-grids in Lesotho. the program will be implemented by One Power, which is a locally based company, and it is indeed a development that we are looking with a lot of interest. We are very glad that this has now could start. It has been in the planning for quite some time, because it will open the way for more investment of the same type. I think I've read that it would be the second investment in Africa of this kind. And you think at this community, some of the community I've visited recently, like Ribana and Selamatebe, the businesses there, the school, the health center, rely on generators, so not only very expensive, but again, not very good for the environment. And it's a not continuous source of electricity because of disruption in fuel supply. It's expensive. So it will change completely. These 11 mini-grids will change completely the life of 20,000 people. 7 health centers will be provided with energy supply, and in the process, up to 100 jobs will be created. So I think it's a win-win situation for Lesotho. It's good for the country, it's good for the community, it's good for the individual consumer, and it's good for the environment. So that's a little bit what we would like to see also in the year to come. One project also I would like to mention, it's the program for the integrated catchment management. The program which is currently implemented can be considered pilot. The plan is to expand the program in the next year with the new resources. It's a program which is implemented with a joint fund of the look at reducing the soil erosion to improve the conservation of water and soils, and as well as to provide complementary sources of income to rural community. So it look at the same time at the natural environment and at the preservation of resource for agriculture, but it look also at providing community with additional revenues that might still be based on natural resources, but might not be the traditional crops, and might add more benefit to the community. Another aspect of this program is the fact that it looks at bringing together the community in a whole catchment area and develop the program in together with the community and for the community. We know that there has been a number of programs in the past, even during the colonial time, on soil erosion, because that was already recognized to be a program. So terracing were developed, reforestation, but possibly one of the shortcomings was that these programs were developed centrally in the capital, in the ministries, and not necessarily incorporated and understood by the community. Or if the community was on board, they were the community in the lower part of the catchment area without involving the community in the higher part. Whatever happened there then has consequences for the community downstream, but there was not this connection between the overall population living in a certain catchment area. And therefore, whatever the benefit of the program implementing downstream were then progressively lost because overgrazing continued, because the water resources were not maintained in the upper part of the valley, and the benefit were progressively lost. So that's again one of the programs that was implemented during the current cooperation phase and will then be expanded during in the next phase. Another area of concentration of resources now, and it will continue to be an area of concentration in the future, is governance. And as part of this program, we have notably supported the national reform authorities. And resources are now foreseen, and as well, it's useful to mention it here, from these resources we have also supported the social protection program of the government of Lesotho. The social protection program has been based on the NISA, on the national database at household level, and which has been developed jointly by the government of Lesotho, UNICEF, and the European Union over 10 years ago, and is still used as a base in order to distribute benefits to vulnerable households, and in particular to vulnerable children. So this program has been implemented during the current cooperation program, has been expanded during the COVID period, because there was a recognition that during COVID, even households that in the past would have not been in need of additional support because of COVID were becoming eligible. And the idea in the new program is to continue to support the program. Indeed, social protection, it's not a long-term solution, but it must continue to be in place as long as there is population which is chronically food insecure, as long as there is population that cannot make ends meet, and therefore it's a program which hopefully in a not too distant future can be reduced, but as long as the current conditions are not met, we will need to continue support and continue support through the government and through UNICEF. So that's more or less.
So
I have maybe one point I still wanted to make. The resources or the program I have been referring to are program for which resources are planned in advance. However, we have resources that are made available based on specific needs. And this is the case, for instance, of the intervention of the European Commission Humanitarian Office, ECHO, which is providing support to World Food Programme, to FAO, to UNICEF, to World Vision, to IOM, in order to face natural disaster and in order to face a specific emergency. For instance, it was with the resources of ECHO that we funded World Vision and UNICEF to be able to support awareness raising related to COVID and COVID vaccination and the logistic of vaccination administration, in particularly in the rural, remote area. It is with the resources of ECHO that we support the cash voucher program of the World Food Programme during the lean season. So between November and March, there are programs to provide support to families which are food insecure during this period. So that's, I want to stress on one side the programmable resources, but also resources that come from other section of the budget in order to support a specific situation. Also, non-programmable resources are those used to support civil society organizations, in particular in the area of human rights, in the area of prevention of gender-based violence. But maybe we speak about it later.
No. Maybe are you able to quantify some of the support that you're talking about, the assistance? You do speak about the...
I will try. I will look also at my note to be sure that I tell you the right number. First of all, the last program for Lesotho, for the last period, the last programmable resource program, EDF 11, had 124 million, which had been subdivided between the different programs.
Euros, was that?
Euro, 124 million euros,
Oh.
yes, yes. For the new program, a new approach has been taken. There is a first allocation up to 20, these 124 million euros were over a period of 7 years. The new program is subdivided in two parts, one until 2024 and the rest until 2027. So the first allocation for Lesotho from now on, it's 83 million, which is the first allocation. The second allocation will be decided in 2024 on the basis of the performance and on the basis of need, and align with the objective of the new National Development Plan. So you see that the 83 million is more than half of the resources foreseen in the previous EDF phase, which shows the intention, let's say, of the EU for the future, and it shows the commitment of the EU towards Lesotho. Now, if we look at the specific project, for instance, the social protection program is a program of 21.5 million euro. The program of the integrated catchment management, I will get there. I want to tell you the exact amount. Let me see, because it's, the Lesotho Lowland Water Development Project, which is a project we didn't mention, or I didn't go into the detail of. It's a project of 41 million euro. But this 41 million euro, it's only the contribution by the EU directly. Altogether, the program, it's a program of over 200 million euro, because it includes, and there I have to look at my note because I'm not very good at remembering all the figure, because it includes the 82 million of a loan from the European Investment Bank, and it includes 67 million from the World Bank, also in form of a loan, and it includes a financing from the government of Lesotho of 10 million euro. We didn't mention in detail this program, but maybe I can say a few words now. It has been designed to provide water and sanitation to 4 major cities in the lowland, which are Maputsoe, Klotse, Mafeteng, and Moaletsuk. It's called Phase 2 because we had been supporting in the past already the Maseru wastewater project. We had been cooperating with the water supply program from the Metolong Dam for Maseru, and this it's now a second phase, with a third phase envisaged under the new program. For Renuka, I haven't yet come to the right page. Let me see. But I think it's also in the order of 20 million. But the support from the European Union is 28 million euro. So they are quite a large program. For the new program, for this first phase, at least 3/4 of the resources will be devoted to the green and resilient economy, so to the water and the energy program. So the bulk of the resources will go to this, let's say, area. It's not necessarily sector.
You've also been involved in the reforms process. I know it's primarily driven by Lesotho in the form of the government and other stakeholders, but you've been involved in a supporting role. These reforms are way behind schedule because they were recommended by SADC in 2016 and we are in 2022 now. So what's your take? One of the things that has obviously affected the implementation of the reforms we've seen in the past, bickering between the government and the opposition, and then some of the times we have situations where parliament goes on lengthy and as some people would say, perhaps unwarranted breaks as well. What's your take? Are you happy with the processes? When are you speaking? Are you in touch with government and other stakeholders? What are they saying about the delays? Because there have been so many extensions of the deadline for implementation, but still we are here. We still don't have the reforms. Elections are just months away now, and the ideal situation would have been for the elections to be held in terms of under the new reforms. What's your take? What are the sentiments expressed, as if you are talking to government and other stakeholders about this situation?
Look, indeed, we would all wish for the reform process to be brought to fruition. As you say, the decision was taken back in 2016, and we haven't yet reached the final point of the reform. One has at the same time to consider that maybe realism should have been, some realism is necessary because it's a very complex process. You are aiming to reform all aspects of government, all aspects of administration. The reform will imply a rebirth of the state of Lesotho. So it's not a process that can be improvised. And I understand that a part of the time was devoted to a very inclusive process of consultation, which was indeed necessary. And then the National Reform Authority was able to start its work. I would say we would all wish that the reform could come to fruition. We are almost there, but we are not yet there. But if I look at all the aspects that need to be changed and transformed, it is not surprising that the process has taken so long. Also because the same representative in the National Reform Authority, the same representative in Parliament that will have the final word of the reform, are also directly affected by the reform. The reform will change the way to make politics in Lesotho. It will curtail the powers of political parties. It will limit the capacity of individual representative moving from one party to the other according to political gain. It will change the way public administration function. It will change the way the checks and balances between the different powers work. So it's a complete overhaul of the state. And a longer process of consultation was in place and was needed. And I understand we would like to be farther, but the process has its own time. I consider it very positively the fact that the Parliament has now decided to restart, start the session before, so ready from next Monday, because hopefully at least the omnibus bill and the first bills that had been already tabled in Parliament can be adopted by March. I know that this is the date that is targeted for this reform, which do not require a referendum, that can be adopted either by simple majority or by two-thirds majority, if at least Lesotho would be in a position to have this reform adopted by March, let's say April, within the lifetime of the National Reform Authority. This would already allow this reform to be applied starting from the next election period. So there are other reforms for which I am less optimistic about the possibility to have them adopted before the election, because they require referenda because they are more complex in terms of the positioning of the different parties, including within government. So this might require a longer time. There might be something that the new government will inherit and will need to carry forward. But I'm hopeful that at least we will see a first set of reforms put in place. And when this happens, then a campaign of civic education will have to start to explain to the citizens what are the implications, what are the new rules, what they might expect, in order also to enable citizens to become the one supervising the implementation. It's an aspect, I think, that the dialogue before the putting in place of the National Reform Authority showed that the citizens want to be involved, want to have participation, and in order to do so, they need to be properly informed, they need to understand their rights, they need to understand the obligation that the government, that the public administration has towards them, and they need to be able to make demands to the government. It's a all new social contracts that need to start from the reform. A new relation between the state and the citizen. And this indeed was not the scenario back at the time of independence, but we are now in a new era, and we need to build a new social contract. All this takes time. So on one side we are all impatient for the reform to come into fruition, but we have also to understand the timing of a process which is complex, and more important that a deadline, a fixed date from my point of view. It's the fact that the reform respects the will of the citizens, respect what the citizens have asked when they were consulted, and that the reform is not in a way manipulated to the benefit of one or the other political force. This is more important to me that set that line. We need to secure that the reform is in place, that they respect the will of the citizen, and then that it is well understood by all involved and implemented. So that would be my take on it.
Okay, maybe sorry to take you back